Good morning, or depending when you're listening to this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always taught how to voice radio, so I've made a podcast all about the Pokémon trading card game. And you're listening to PTCG Radio. This is half term for me, but I'm back with another podcast because I love you people all just so very, very much. Now, one thing I should warn you about as we start this week is that there will be no comprehensive regionals roundup this week. No look at the results of each particular tournament. There's a couple of reasons for that. Firstly, I've been on half term this week and I've yet to see a proper rundown of all of the results. And secondly, to be completely honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, I've not seen anything terribly exciting, so at some point I am going to give you a proper rundown of those results, but in all seriousness, I haven't seen anything which really gets me excited, and there's enough other stuff to talk about this week without needing to go into all of that. What we are going to be talking about this week is we got some little bits of news which are moderately exciting. We've got some new cards which are incredibly exciting, which I think you need to know about. I'm going to tell you about a couple of decks from regionals. I'm going to tell you about, essentially, the things which I've seen from regionals so far that I think you need to know about. The information and decks, etc., which are kind of getting out there, which I think you do need to be aware of. And then I'm going to look at the EXs from Primal Clash. I don't know whether it was because I took a week off through illness or what it is, but for some reason or another, there's just too much to talk about lately between new cards and tournament results and decks people are winning with and all of that stuff. Well, I'm running a little bit short of time, so I know we haven't gone through all the Primal Clash stuff yet, so we're going to go through the EXs this week, and we'll probably end up hitting the trainers next week, and then we will be going through the non-EX Pokemon in a couple of weeks' time, or maybe next week if we've got time. If you are desperate for my thoughts on Primal Clash, I should remind you that I did do a couple of podcasts about this. In Japan, these were released as Gaia Volcano and Tidal Storm, and I did a really comprehensive podcast about each of them, going through all of the cards you need to know. So, if you're really wondering about them, you can't wait for a couple of weeks' time to get my thoughts on them. Go back and have a look at those podcasts from a month or two ago, and I assure you all of my thoughts are in there. Yay! Now, starting off this week then, we need to have a quick talk about cheating. Now, there has been a bit of controversy, I think there's a polite way to put it. There was a guy at a Canadian regionals who he got all the way into top 8 with a 63 card deck. Now, for those of you that play the Pokemon trading card game, and I'm assuming from the fact that you're listening to this podcast 132 episodes in, it's probably all of you. You should know at this stage that we play with 60 card decks, and this is fair. It means everyone can play with the right amount. Rumours persist, and apparently these are very reliable, that a chap made it all the way to into the top 8 and beyond with a 63 card deck. Now, he also apparently has been caught cheating in other ways in previous tournaments, and then there's apparently in the same tournament he baited some guy into using an N in a game that he couldn't otherwise win, and he announced Lysandre for the game without actually having a Lysandre and managed to get a win out of it. It all sounds very, very shady, and I don't want to go into too much information about this because I wasn't there, and it's an awful lot of he said, she said, and although he has the person in question, who I shan't be naming, has denied this, it was, shall we say, somewhat incoherently that it was denied. I suppose what I want to say is just don't. I mean, I've talked about cheating on the podcast before. Now, this year I haven't been to as many tournaments as I'd like. Life has gotten in the way just a little bit with job and girlfriend and all that stuff. I still play a lot online, and I keep up with it, and I do my podcast, and in a week and a half, if not before, I'm going to be going to, well, I won't be going to Nottingham Cities before a week and a half, but I may be going to other tournaments if they come up. But I'll be going to Nottingham Cities in a week and a half, and Nottingham Regionals a couple of weeks after that, and I believe I've got Yeovil Regionals lined up, and there's an outside chance of Wakefield Regionals, and, I'm going to be going to a bunch of tournaments, but I'm not going to make my world impact this year. I've said that before, but I play this game for fun. I have a lot of good friends that play it. I enjoy playing it. I enjoy coming up with new decks. I mean, it's no secret that in Nottingham Cities, I'm going to be playing some variant of the new Excadrill card because I love the new Excadrill card. And it just really depresses me that there are people out there who are so desperate to win that they have to go through these tactics of playing with too many cards or baiting people into using an N in order to get the win. And it's just terribly, terribly depressing. I mean, if you are one of those people, and I mean, I've found that the people who cheat to win generally think they're too good to have to listen to podcasts like this, which is good. I mean, in the nicest possible way. I don't want those people listening to this. They're not my kind of people. But just quit. Do something else. Go count cards in a casino. Earn some real money. Because the prizes in Pokemon ain't that good. I suppose if you end up in, the top so many people, top 20 people, then you're going to be able to get a paid invite to Boston this year, which I suppose is maybe a prize worth cheating about. But really, it's just not cool. I can see why people would do it, but it's a children's card game. It's played for fun. The prizes really aren't that amazing, and if you are one of those people that, has to cheat to win, just quit. That's about all I got to say on that. I could go into loads of detail about how the guy cheated and, what he got away with and give you his name and all of that. It's not something I'm terribly keen to do on this podcast. It's not the kind of thing I like to do, but I suppose if you're one of those people that's considering doing stuff like that, don't be a douche. Now, going into more fun news this week, we have a Kyogre and Groudon collection. These are going to have fun little reprints of the Kyogre and Groudon from Primal Clash, obviously the non-EXs. And you get 4 packs, and instead of a jumbo promo, like you would get in the Kyogre and Groudon boxes, you get little figures, obviously Kyogre or Groudon, depending on which one you've gone for. So, I suppose that's kind of cool. Not the biggest piece of news ever, but I know some people do like the models and like to kind of collect them and all of that. So if you do, new models are coming out. Now, we know we're going to get a May set. We've just had our February set, and for those of you that are a little bit new, we get 4 new sets a year, 1 in February, 1 in May, 1 in August, and 1 in November. They are our kind of 4 sets for the year. We've just had our February set, that was Primal Clash, and we've had some first information about our May set, which is going to be called Roaring Skies. It's coming out on May the 6th, which means it will be legal for tournament play as of May the 27th. Again, for those that don't know, we do now have a definitive ruling that sets will be legal for tournament play 21 days after their official release date. And I don't think I'm going to get to it today, but there was some interesting news I saw from one card website about the fact that essentially they're being sent their stock from TCPI, the Pokemon Company International, very late now, which is affecting their ability to fulfill their orders in a timely fashion because TCPI are getting so worried about people leaking the set early and selling the stuff early. But it doesn't. I'm going to get more into that, like I say, next week, and I've got a bit more time to talk about this stuff. It can wait. I think it's kind of interesting and cool, but it can wait for a week. But, regardless of when you actually get the set, and as I've just alluded to, we do generally tend to find now that something or other comes out early which leaks the cards. It will be May the 27th that you'll be able to use these. The really exciting thing about this set is it is the last set which will be released before Nationals. So this is going to be our last kind of set before Nationals. So this is what's going to help us to really set the Nationals metagame. Now, it's going to have over 100 cards and seems to feature a horde of Dragon-type Pokemon, which is kind of cool, I suppose. We know we're going to have Mega Rayquaza EX, Mega Latios EX, Thundurus EX, Hydreigon EX, Deoxys, Dragonite, and Zekrom. There's going to be 11 new Pokemon EX, including 4 Mega EXs, and there's going to be 2 brand new types of Energy, Mega Turbo Energy. Let's not guess what that is going to be yet. There really is no clues. And Double Dragon Energy, which is both an awesome little... it's not a deliberate reference, but an unintentional reference to the awesome 90s video game, which I keep referencing in my law classes, and still none of the students get it, which is just disappointing. But again, it seems fairly obvious what this is going to be. Think double colourless, but with dragon. Now, the more interesting thing about this is, of course, although we have dragon Pokemon, we don't have dragon energy. All dragon Pokemon work off other types of energy. If I had to guess, think something along the lines of it provides 2 of any kind of energy, but only when attached to a dragon Pokemon as a special energy. It could follow the Aqua and Magma energy, which I told you about last week or the week before, where it gets discarded at the end of the turn. That could be a mechanic Pokemon are going down the lines of. You can have 2 energy for certain types of Pokemon, but you got to discard at the end of your turn. If it is just literally 2 of any kind of energy when attached to a dragon Pokemon, that's crazy. Now, they've never actually done that before. We've had Double Rainbow, which I believe could only be used if you were behind on prize cards or couldn't be attached to EXs or something along those lines. Generally, these really good types of energy have a drawback. Although there'll be special energy and enhanced hammer can beat them, there's usually more of a kind of concrete drawback than that. Regardless, the dragon Pokemon have always been largely unplayable, outside of A few exceptions, like, for instance, for a short period of time, the Dragonite with Deafen saw a little bit of play, but that was based off of just colourless energy. And also for quite a while, the old Rayquaza EX from Dragon's Exalted saw a fair bit of play, along with Electric, and Hydreigon did also see a bit of play more as a support Pokemon. But Dragons as attackers really haven't been that good, and part of the reason is they've always required a very awkward mix of energy. Maybe this double dragon energy can help to fix that. Again, we don't have any more information other than the name, so this is pure reckless speculation on my part. But let's face it, I've always been fairly up on the reckless speculation on this podcast, so why stop now? One thing which is incredibly exciting, which I think a lot of you probably would have heard of already, I got a couple of tweets about this as soon as it was announced, so as always, thank you to those people who do. If you ever do want to tweet at me, you can find me on Twitter at TheWossy, TheWossy, or you can email me at PTCGRadio@hotmail.co.uk. I always very much appreciate anyone giving me a heads up on anything on email or Twitter. And I'm afraid I don't have the emails in front of me, but I got a couple of lovely emails this week from people who have started listening very recently, including a chap from Ontario in Canada who listens with his 10 and 12-year-old children. I'm apologising that I can't remember your name, but hello to you, sir. And to the other people that have emailed me this week, if I can find my phone at some point, I will give you a proper shout-out using your names and everything. Except the dude who said he listens with his kids, he didn't tell me his kid's name, so I'm afraid they won't get a real shout-out. Sorry about that. So, Pokemon Art Academy TCG Illustrator Competition. This is awesome. What you do is you draw either a cosplay Pikachu, that's the boring option, or one of your favourite Pokemon, and you can get them printed on real Pokemon cards. A panel of Pokemon officials are going to pick 6 winners. Each of the 6 winners gets 100 official Pokemon prints of the card they've designed. It's not going to be sold to the general public, and it will not be tournament legal. But I don't think, anyone's really going to care. Well, I mean, people will care about it, but, you get to draw a Pokemon card and then have 100 copies of that Pokemon card to give out to friends, etc., etc. Obviously, if any of the people who listen to this podcast enter and win that tournament, you're going to get 100 cards. Just saying. Do a podcast every week. Lovely guy. Just throwing it out there. Now, the competition opens on February the 18th and it ends on March the 29th. Winners will be announced in May. Here's what to do if you want to enter. You need to go onto the website and create and save an image. You need to create and save an image in Pokemon Art Academy using free paint mode. You then need to select the share option from Pokemon Art Academy's main menu and connect to Miiverse. You then select a post competition option and select I agree. And you can either enter 2 categories, dress up Pikachu or your favourite Pokemon. Now, the only way to enter is directly from the Pokemon Art Academy game, which is available exclusively for the Nintendo 3DS. Now, that's obviously the big kicker here. You've got to go and buy yourself, if you haven't already, a copy of Pokemon Art Academy or borrow one from your mates and enter directly from the game. So my apologies for mentioning the website there. It is all off Pokemon Art Academy, the game. So quite a strenuous entry requirement, I'll give you that. But I've heard quite fun things about the game and, when else are you going to get the opportunity to have an official Pokemon card made of your design? Yeah, there's only 6 winners and there's going to be hundreds or thousands of entrants, but let's just ignore all of that. It's a hella cool competition, and, it's a good chance you've got. Moving into promo cards, there's a lot of news this week. We have had our free pack blister promos revealed. It's the Regirock I told you a little while ago, and the Fighting Pangoro, which gives extra HP for each of your benched Pokemon. So it could be a Stage 1 Pangoro with 200 HP. I mentioned both of them in previous podcasts, and long story short, they weren't particularly good. Now, I have been made to look silly. Last week I told you about the Rayquaza EX box, and I mentioned that this probably means that we're not going to be seeing the Mega Absol box anytime soon, because, the Rayquaza was announced in Japan and then very quickly in the UK, whereas Mega Absol has been out in Japan for ages and not announced for the UK, and I speculated on reasons why it hasn't come out. And would you believe it? 3 days after I recorded the podcast, it has been announced that the Mega Absol EX Premium Collection is being released on May the 29th. Now, go back to last week's podcast where I talk about this properly, but essentially, Regular Absol's fine. Mega Absol is brilliant. 80 damage for 2 dark energy, and discard a card from your opponent's deck. If it's a trainer, it does 160. Stick a muscle band out on that, 180. You're one hit KOing any Pokemon EX. That is amazing. Oh, I should mention, other than the Team Aqua Kyogre or Team Magma Groudon, which have 190, they're the lone exceptions. And Wailord, so they aren't the lone exceptions. But apart from those 3, you one hit KOing any EX. Now, this is amazing. The good news is, as this is being released in a box like Mega Diancie and like Mega Metagross, I think it's fair to assume we're not going to be seeing a Spirit Link for this particular card, which I kind of like, actually. On the one hand, it means you can pop a Muscle Band on there to do 180, but really, a 2-energy Pokemon with a Spirit Link, which can do 160, and then you can play Laser to get it up to, even 190. It's just crazy good. Now, it is weak to fighting, which would also help to mitigate it, but it is just a crazy good Pokemon. So, it's coming out in a box, and I think, whereas Mega Metagross was very meh, Mega Diancie was very meh, I think Mega Absol might actually see a little bit more sale, a few more sales, a little bit more play. Now, if you do buy it, it comes with a Jumbo Mega Absol EX, a Mega Absol Collector's Pin, a Mega Absol Coin, and 6 booster packs, which are kind of cool. If you really want to play this, get prepared to buy a bunch of those boxes and have a load of Jumbo promos and pins you don't know what to do with, but you'll also have a bunch of boosters as well. It's a cool product, it's a cool card. The fact that you'll actually have to end your turn to evolve it is quite a big thing, and of course it's going to be vulnerable on the bench for the return, but still, it's a heck of a card. And if you leave something like a regular Evil's Hal active, that bad boy can soak up a little bit of damage. Yeah, your Absol can be Lysandred up and hurt, but still, this could be a very, very good Pokemon. In more I got it right predictions, Rayquaza EX is getting a Spirit Link, as I predicted, because it looked like it was going to come out in our May set. It is coming out in our May set, therefore it's getting a Spirit Link. What this means is, and I've been saying this for a while, so I'll say it very quickly, and I should probably stop saying it after this. Pokemon seem to be making it very clear that Mega EXs released in sets are getting Spirit Links in the same set in which they're released, and Mega EXs released as part of promos packs like your Mega Absol are not getting Spirit Links. I also mentioned Steven as a card which was revealed last week, and Steven, we now have a translation. Search your deck for 1 supporter card and 1 basic energy card, reveal them and put them into your hand. Think of it like when you have to play a Skylar to get a better supporter, except you get to get a basic energy as well. Nobody wants to Skylar for another supporter. We've all had to do it many, many times in the past when Skylar's the only supporter we've had, but still, it's not something we really want to be doing, so I can't see Steven seeing a huge amount of play. So yeah. Now, before we go on to regionals and the rest, and this is looking like it could turn into a bit of a monster today, but I've never had people complain about the length of the podcast, other than people complaining that I say too much. I'm going to try and make it shorter. But this is going to be the really exciting bit of the podcast. Probably should save it for last, but I've written it on my list as the next thing to go through, so hey-ho, it's the next thing we're going to go through. We've had some scans from Emerald Break. Now, this is the Japanese set, which is coming out very soon, and we are also going to be seeing as our May set, i.e. these cards will not be around for a couple of months, but they will be around in time for Nationals and Worlds. So, first things first, we've got Mega Turbo. Attach 1, it's a trainer item card. Attach 1 basic energy card from your discard pile to one of your Mega Evolved Pokemon in play. That is awesome. That's really, really strong. It's a trainer card. Well, it's Dark Patch. Now remember how, for those of you that didn't play, Dark Patch allowed you to attach a Dark Energy from your discard pile to one of your bench Dark Pokemon. This is better, because it's not just a Dark, it's any basic energy to any EX, not just any dark Pokemon. And again, these are Japanese translations subject to change when we get the official English cards, although generally I'm using Pokebeach.com's translations, which are usually pretty good. The reason I use Pokebeach, there are other websites that do translations of Japanese cards, but there's been a couple times in the past where Pokebeach has disagreed with these websites, and Pokebeach generally is correct. So free plug there for Pokebeach, but they've been the more reliable one in the past. By the way, I think my pops were going off a little bit too much at the beginning of the podcast. I think they've gotten better. As I say that, I'm looking at the graph and it's getting worse again. Hey-ho. This is crazy good. Now think about that Mega Absol. Now, the big problem with Mega Absol is you're losing a turn. You're having a Mega Evolve and you're losing a turn, and this is quite bad. You're running out of steam. It might be that you can't attach energy fast enough because you can Mega Evolve each turn, but you can't attach 2 Dark Energy every turn, and that's a problem. Well, with Mega Turbo, you can attach 2 Dark Energy per turn. You can attach 1 from your hand, 1 using Mega Turbo, and then it doesn't matter. As long as you can just have a turn to evolve it, you can get it going in 1 turn. And I've mentioned on this podcast many, many times in the past, and it's a good rule to live by. Pokemon that can get going in 1 turn, attach for 1 energy, or you can get going in 1 turn, think using Blastoise to power up a Black Kyurem EX, have always been very, very strong. They allow more aggression, more speed. Think of cards like Kyogre, Mega Kyogre EX, which has been just not quite fast enough. Heck, when we get to Camerupt in a minute, now I'm going to give Camerupt a fairly poor review, as it stands at the moment, but when I mention Camerupt, think about Mega Turbo. It's going to make him look one heck of a lot better. All of a sudden, every Mega Pokemon EX has just become better. Now, you could use a weird kind of engine where you combine this with Energy Switch or Scramble Switch in order to actually build up a regular Pokemon EX or just a non-EX Pokemon using your EX Pokemon as a kind of, conduit. It's far from ideal, but the point is it can be used. But even so, now any Mega EX has just gotten better. Kangaskhan now attacks more easily. Think of Venusaur. Has an amazing attack, but I've always said about Venusaur, it's just too gosh darn slow. And heck, if you're really going to be piling 3 or 4 energy onto a Pokemon EX in a grass deck, use Virizion and pile it onto Genesect. Now you've got a reason to use Venusaur instead. Although Venusaur came out before they started printing Spirit Links. I mean, when it comes to the Mega EXs, your Spirit Linked Mega EXs are always going to have a big advantage over your non-Spirit Linked Mega EXs. But, I need to stop talking about this card because I've said it every way I can at this stage, but all Mega EXs just got the ability to attach, in theory, up to 5 energy per turn if you played 4 Mega Turbo with 4 basic energy in the discard pile. This helps for aggression and recovery, and, anyone that's been playing for a long time is going to know energy acceleration is always, always good. It's always an advantage. This just made Mega EXs better. And one of the things we've been talking about on this podcast for a while is the fact that Mega EXs haven't been good enough. Now, the Spirit Links made them a little bit better. Now Mega Turbo's making them better again. With the rules as they were initially released, my theory has always been they were never good enough. They had to be game-breaking in order to have, 4 energy attacks and lose a turn to evolve. And they weren't. They were just kind of like EXs with occasionally better attacks and a little bit more HP that you had to waste a turn evolving and were too expensive. Now, both those problems being solved, we could see a lot more Mega Evolutions in the game. And I don't think this is a coincidence. I don't think it's a coincidence that this Mega EX mechanic has not seen a huge amount of success in tournament play. So now Pokemon are releasing cards that make Mega EXs more viable. It seems like they want us to use Mega EXs, and it seems like they're giving us the tools to do so. We also have a Swampert EX coming out, and he's not terribly good. 180 HP, weak to grass. Where did all the Lightning Weak Water Pokemon go? Because they're all weak to grass nowadays. Like, all of them. Which, will continue to make Virizion and Genesect a good deck. But the attacks are just terrible. A Water and a double colourless, 40 damage. Reveal the top 4 cards of your deck. This attack does 40 more damage for each Water energy you find. Shuffle the 4 cards back into your deck. Now, you would have to have a muscle band and hit free energy out of those 4 cards to one-hit KO an EX. It's overpriced. If you can guarantee those cards, we don't really have that good cards nowadays to really kind of arrange the top card of our deck like we've had in the past. If you can guarantee you've got all the energy at the top, then that's cool, but other than that, it's not overwhelming me at the moment. And 2 water and a double colourless, it does 120 to the opponent, 20 to itself. Yeah. There is a Mega Rayquaza EX, which we don't have a good scan of at the moment. It has an attack that does 300 damage. We don't know the cost, we don't know the effect, we don't know anything. But it does 300 damage. It's a dragon type with 230 HP, so it's something to keep an eye on. We also see a new ancient trait here. Remember that ancient traits are generally, as we've seen so far, repeated amongst Pokemon. So although this ancient trait is it's one we've only seen on this Mega Rayquaza EX for the time being, it doesn't mean we're not going to see it on other Pokemon. The chances are we will. Delta Wild. Damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's grass, fire, water and lightning Pokemon is reduced by 20. Think Bouffalante's Boofer ability or Donphan Prime's Pokebody, but really specific for some weird reason. There's also a Mega Latios EX, which has an attack called Sonic Ace for a water, psychic and colourless. We don't know what it does. It appears, we just don't know anything about it. We need more information. So let's not get too into it. Now, one thing I'm going to remind you of at this stage is the Rayquaza. Actually, no, we're going to talk about the Rayquaza EX from last week in just a second. There's a couple fairly underwhelming Pokemon. There's a Natu and a Wingull. They're designed to evolve, so they suck, but hopefully they're going to evolve into something good. There's a Skarmory that's got Call for Family. Retreat cost of 1, search for 2 basic, put it on your bench. It's not seen play lately, but maybe it will in the future. There is a Swellow, which has another new type of another new type of ancient trait, Delta Plus, and this is incredibly exciting. Take 1 more prize card if your opponent's Pokemon is knocked out by damage from this opponent's attacks. For 2 colourless energy it does 30, for 3 it does 50. This would be an excellent 1/1 tech in any deck, especially if you're playing double colourless energy, because this isn't a card you really want to attack with, but essentially you just put 2 or 3 energy on it and just take a prize with it. So, in this kind of deck you would hope to get your opponent down to very little HP, take the prize with Swellow, all of a sudden it's 2 or it's 3 prizes. Now it would take a bit of planning on your part. It's a stage 1, and with it having Delta Plus, it doesn't have Delta Evolution, so you have to put the Tailo on the bench, which is a weak basic Pokemon, and then evolve it into Swellow the following turn. It telegraphs what you're doing to your opponent, and it also allows your opponent to take evasive action, or to Lysandra up and kill it, etc. And it takes a lot of planning on your part to get your opponent down to 30 or 50 or less damage in order to actually take the prize with Swellow to get the extra prize card. But as a 1/1 tech in pretty much every deck, I think it could be pretty good. And there is an Unfezant with Delta Evolution, which is one we talked about before, which allows you to just evolve the Pokemon as and when you want, the turn you put it into play or the turn it's previously been evolved. Now, the attacks suck. For a double colourless, it can do Feather Dance, which does nothing, but next turn it does 80 more damage, and Sky Attack for 3 colourless energy, which does 120, but fails on the flip of a coin if you hit it tails. What that means is, on one turn, you can do Feather Dance, and then on the next turn, for 3 energy, you can do Sky Attack, and do 200 damage, but it's on a coin flip. Now, it is a stage 2, although you can get it going on stage 1, but even so, I mean, do you really want to be on the second turn of the game using a stage 2 that's got 3 energy on it, one of which would have to be a double colourless, to do 200 damage, which then fails on a coin flip? It's just not quite good enough, unfortunately. So, yeah. I like the idea, but it's not bowling us over yet. Now, one thing I want to remind you of is a couple of cards we talked about last week. Now, it's interesting that the Dragon Mega Rayquaza does 300 damage, because it could be amazing. We know that there is one Mega Rayquaza EX, which very much is amazing. It's got Delta Evolution, which allows you to evolve it the turn you put it into play. And it has a Spirit Link, which allows you to Mega Evolve without losing a turn. This is crazy. It also has one attack, which is awesome, for free colourless energy, 30 damage times the number of Pokemon on your bench. Now, I foolishly said that's 180 damage last week. I was thinking 180 damage with a Verbank laser. Of course, with a full bench and no Verbank laser, it only does 150, 30 times 5. And thank you to my good friend Mark Levy for pointing that one out to me on Twitter, at the Wassy. Now, we've also got Rayquaza EX. We've got a couple of them which fine, they're not terribly good. It's a Mega Rayquaza I want to focus on. Now, yes, it does take free energy, but remember I just told you about that trainer card which allows you to attach an energy from your discard pile? You could legitimately, and yes, it takes a fair bit of doing, but you could legitimately go Rayquaza EX, pop a Spirit Link, Mega Rayquaza EX, Mega Turbo to get a basic from your discard, double colourless, and you can get this guy out in one turn, which I think there are going to be some speed decks around which make this guy crazy, crazy good. We haven't seen a proper legitimate speed deck for quite a while. I think this bad boy could be a proper legitimate speed deck. And there is another card coming out, ladies and gentlemen, which makes him look even speedier, which we'll get to in a minute. So, 30 damage for free energy, bearing in mind we've got a trainer card which allows you to attach energy from the discard pile. He runs on double colourless, and he has a Spirit Link, and he's got Delta Revolution. What could be better? Well, we have another card that could help him. It's a Stadium card, because one of the big downsides of Rayquaza EX is that you can only put 5 bench Pokemon down. But we have Skyfield. Both players may have up to 8 benched Pokemon. If this Stadium card is no longer in play, each player discards their benched Pokemon and all cards attached to them until there are 5 benched Pokemon left. Now, the way that's worded at the moment gives us a fairly clear implication that it's going to be essentially dealer's choice. When your opponent puts down a Stadium, you get to discard whatever you want. Now we're getting more tasty. 8 bench Pokemon times 30 damage is 240 damage, which is enough to KO even any Mega EX in one hit. Now, you might be thinking, well, hang on a second, that's quite a lot. We're going to need a bunch of bench Pokemon, and we're going to need a Skyfield, and we're going to need a Rayquaza EX, and we're going to need a Spirit Link, and we're going to need the Mega, and we're going to need a Mega Turbo card, and we're going to need energy in the discard pile, and we're going to need a double colourless energy. Yes, we are. We absolutely are. But there is help, in the form of the most exciting card that has been released literally in years. Now, for anyone that's been playing for as long as I have or longer, they will remember Uxie from, I forget the set, something like Legendary Treasures. It was around about then. It was a Diamond and Pearl set. And Uxie had an ability called Setup, or something along those lines. And you popped Uxie on the bench and you drew till you had 7 cards in your hand. And it had an attack which allowed you to basically put it back in the deck to protect it. We have a Shaymin EX. Now, it's a colourless Pokemon, weak to lightning, with 110 HP. So it's very easily killed. No one's going to care because it has the setup ability. Once during your turn, when you play this Pokemon from your hand to your bench, you may draw cards until you have 6 cards in your hand. Anyone that played when Uxie was a thing is going to realise how crazy good this card is. Anyone that didn't play when Uxie was a thing might not realise. You can run through so many cards so quickly. You can essentially be drawing, and this depends on how you play and how you build your deck and all of that. You get down to just an Ultra Ball and a couple other cards in your deck, you Ultra Ball for a Shaymin, you draw 6. And then you can keep doing that. And then you can play a Juniper for 7. You could, in theory, be drawing over half your deck in one turn using Shaymin EX. Let's not forget, of course, now, I'm talking about Rayquaza EX and I'm talking about Shaymin EX, so let's be clear. Just talking about Shaymin EX on his own, I would be surprised if this didn't go into every deck. Yes, he's weak. Yes, he can be Lysandre'd up and killed fairly easily because he's only got 110 HP. Yes, he's weak to lightning, which means he's going to be killed very easily by Manectric, blah, 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 blah. It's non-supporter draw. It is very, very strong non-supporter draw. Now, it gets turned off by Garbodor, but that's it. It's stunning. It's amazing. Everyone's going to want to be playing this card. Yes, it's easily killed, but everyone's playing Jirachi at the moment, which is more easily killed. So there goes that argument. Not only that, of course, but it's got an attack called Sky Return. For a double colourless energy, 30 damage, boom, it goes back into your hand. So you can play it down, and then you can just put it back into your hand using the attack. Put something like a Robo Substitute, or a Sigilif with Safeguard, or a Zekrom with Outrage, etc. in the active. It's Pokemon Draw, and we haven't had proper Pokemon Draw since Uxie rotated out. No, that's not true. We've had some things like Magnezone EX, but not universal Pokemon Draw that every deck's been playing every single time. The downside is it's an EX, maybe one every couple of boxes. The price on this card is gonna be crazy, so whether you think it's good or not, my advice to all of you is, when this set comes out, go get Shaymin. Trade for Shaymin, buy the singles, buy it before the price gets crazy. I cannot imagine this is not going to be an amazing card. The only downside is how easily it's killed, and that doesn't stop people playing Jirachi, and Jirachi doesn't have an attack which puts it back into your hand for a double colourless energy. Now let's flick back to Rayquaza. Rayquaza needs a lot of cards in order to do its thing. Oh look, Shaymin helps us to draw cards. Rayquaza needs a lot of Pokemon on the bench. Oh look, Shaymin helps us get Pokemon on the bench. And then one of the most annoying things that could happen to Rayquaza is that your opponent gets rid of your stadium and you go down to 5 bench Pokemon. Now the wording we have at the moment means that you get to choose which Pokemon you discard. So discard your Shaymin. If you're that worried about them being Lysandre'd up and killed, discard your Shaymin. So essentially, either your opponent leaves your stadium in play, and if my opponent's killing one Shaymin and ignoring my Mega Rayquaza, which is doing 210 damage if he kills my Shaymin, I'm fine with that. Because, as we all know when we play this game, killing a Jirachi is really good for your last 2 prizes. But if your opponent's got a Genesect with 4 energy and a G-booster attached, you really don't want to kill the Jirachi. Because if you kill the Jirachi, then you're using your attacker to kill a bench Pokemon, and then they're using their attacker to kill your attacker, and then you're getting a worse board position out of that. Or they put down a stadium and you get to discard your Shaymin, it doesn't matter anyway. Now, I like Shaymin on his own because it's universal Pokemon Draw. Every single deck can take advantage of this. Every deck can use Sky Return to get him back into your hand. Every deck can take advantage of the draw, unless you're playing against a Garbodor, of course, and have no way to get rid of the tool. The only thing I am worried about is this Rayquaza. Think Turbo Lugia, but potentially better and quicker. You legitimately can get this going in one turn. Now, especially with Shaymin. I would be surprised if Rayquaza and Shaymin were not one hell of a combo. I am certainly going to be trying to trade for these at pre-releases, and I'm certainly going to be trying to look for cheap singles of these on every website when they're released. These are 2 of the most exciting cards we've seen released in some time. So, quite frankly, I think it's worth having a look at these, to be honest with you. It really is. By the way, I've just realised I told you about Mega Turbo with Camerupt. You don't attach the energy to Camerupt. You'd have to have a different Mega EX in play, and you would basically just use any Mega EX to attach energy with Mega Turbo and then do the attacking with Camerupt. Obviously, you don't attach the energy to Camerupt because Camerupt doesn't have a Mega EX. Just as a quick extra there. Now, this podcast is going on a little while, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to not mention the EXs from Primal Clash. We're going to save the Primal Clash stuff for next week, and we're going to finish off today just talking about a couple of decks which I saw having a little bit of success at regionals this past weekend. Now, the first one's neither of them are really new decks per se. The first one is Night March. Night March has seen people top cutting at regionals, making day 2, making top 32. Now, there's a very interesting article for this on the Charizard Lounge by Andrew Wambolt, and I encourage all of you to go and have a look at that. But essentially, it's Night March, but played with Mew, and played with Manectric, and maybe even, a 1-1 Flareon and a 1-1 Leafeon line. And now, I told you at the time I wasn't a fan of Mew in Night March, and I stood by that at the time. But now, the way they're playing it is better. Manectric's attack costs a Lightning and a Colourless. So, difficult to actually get going in one turn. And it does 60 or 120 if they've got a tool attached. Mew, on the other hand, has Dimension Valley, so that Colourless, which removes one Colourless from the cost of each Psychic Pokemon's attacks. So now imagine you've got a Mew and a Dimension Valley, and a Manectric on the bench, and now you're doing 120 damage for one Lightning Energy. Now we're starting to look pretty gosh darn good. Not to mention the fact that Mew can copy Seismitoad's Quaking Punch, with a Dimension Valley in play for just one energy. So they can actually use it more easily than Seismitoad can. And if you pop a Hard Charm on your Mew and start using Quaking Punch against Seismitoad, they're going to be 12 hit KOing your Mew. 12 hit KOing. Because they're going to be trainer locked, so they're not going to be able to put a muscle band down. And they're doing 10 energy a turn. That's pretty gosh darn good. Now, Night March still has a bad Seismitoad deck, but you see where I'm going with this. Mew has options, and the way it's generally being played is you've got your 1-1 Flareon line to really help you if you need to against Rizzy and Genesect. You've got your 1-1 Leafeon line to help you against Seismitoad. You've got Manectric there to help you against Yveltal decks, and also to help you use that attack with Mew. Oh, and just in case you really cared, you can also use Night March, which is still very, very good against any EX-heavy deck. And it has very favourable matchups. Now, it's still not great against Seismitoad, but you've got options. It's not entirely unwinnable. And it's still pretty terrible against Donphan, because the prize trade is going to be in their favour, and they're popping Robo Substitutes active for you to kill, which isn't really doing anything. Not to mention they can pop a Safeguard Sigilif up there, so you can't use Mew, etc., etc. So it's a deck which I suppose I'm saying give another look to, but you're going to be wanting to use a list very unlike the one that I ran. You're going to want to be using Manectric and Mew. Now, my YouTube channel, I have now started updating the podcast, and all the podcasts are going to be up to date on there in the next few days, which is very exciting. But then we're going to start having proper videos up there. One which you should be looking forward to, although I haven't seen Primal Clash too much on this podcast. I'll be doing my top 10 cards of Primal Clash up on my YouTube channel, and that will be up by the end of next week. I can't give you an exact date, but by this time next week or a day or two later, that video will be up there. I'm also going to start doing a bunch of deck breakdowns. Manectric Excadrill is going to be making an appearance. I'm hoping to do a Mewtwo Crobat deck if Luke Kirkham is going to be kind enough to give me a list of that, because he won a Cities with it lately. So a bit of a winning deck breakdown there. And on the Charizard Lounge, it gives you one of these Night March lists. So although I've just given you a quick rundown of it now, I'm going to be doing a deck breakdown of that one on my YouTube channel in the near future. I believe I've got the technical problems worked out. So I've got those 3 deck breakdowns lined up to have a go at, and I'll be doing at least one game with each of those decks and my top 10 cards of Primal Clash. So my YouTube channel is going to be getting a lot of love. Speaking of which, thank you to those people who have been watching my YouTube channel. Most of my videos are now getting up to 500 views, despite the fact I've been pretty much absent on there for the last month for various reasons. But I am making a comeback. It is going to happen. Also, a quick apology to Luke Kirkham. Last week I told you about his ECC deck. I portrayed it as a Seismitoad deck with Manectric in. That is unfair and untrue. It is a Manectric deck with Seismitoad in, and very interesting. I've already told you about Manectric's attack, which does 120 if your opponent has a tool on it. So you run something along the lines of Headringer or Jamming Net, so that if your opponent doesn't have a tool on, you can put a tool on. Then with Verbank Laser and a Muscle Band on Manectric, you're up to 170 for 2 energy. That's a very low energy cost to get 1-hit KOs. So, yeah, that was his deck, so my apologies for that. The other deck which had a pretty nice showing at regionals, I saw a bit of the St. Louis regional stream this past weekend, and this was a deck that showed up there. And it was in the expanded format, using cards like Level Ball and Pokemon Communication, which certainly helped, but it was still a deck which absolutely would translate to non-extended format. It was fighting bats. So you've got your Golbat and your Crobat, which I talked about last week when I talked about the Virizion Genesect decks at the ECC, running Golbat and Crobat. Golbat, you evolve, it does 20 damage. Crobat, you evolve, it does 30 damage. And these people seem to be running about a 2-2-2 line of these, which gives you an extra 10 damage counters over the course of a game, which is huge. And again, your opponent can Lysandre up and kill your Crobat or your Golbat, but then they're not killing your attacker. The other attackers they were using were Lucario EX, 30 for 1 energy, 60 for 2. Landorus EX, 30 to the active, 30 to the bench for 1 fighting energy. And Horlicher, 60 to your opponent's active Pokemon for 1 fighting energy. Then you add in Strong Energy, plus 20 to any Pokemon. Fighting Stadium, plus 20 to any EX. Muscle Band, plus 20 to anything. Or Silver Bangle, which does an extra 30, but only from a non-EX to an EX. So it would be Horlicher or your Bats. And this adds up very quickly. We've talked in the past about the fact that these fighting decks always looked better than they were performing. It seems like a really straightforward Horlicher, Landorus, Lucario deck attacking for 1 energy with your bats in there to help you may well be the way to actually play this. And it was, at one point there was a mirror match in top 4 of the regionals. A Landorus Bats mirror match in top 4 of a regional championship, which is just crazy. So it's another deck to think about and have a look at. How good it's going to be going forward, I don't know. It seems fairly easily counterable. You get a good Seismitoad Garbodor list going. Crobat and Golbat are doing nothing, and then you're down to just attacking with Lucario or Horlicher. And Horlicher, if you put a Muscle Band Verbank Laser, that gets killed very easily anyway. But it's a deck to have a think about. So we've talked about an awful lot this week. I've asked you not to be a douche with all of your cheating, and I hope you listened to me with that one. We've gone through some little new cards. We've gone through 2 new decks from regionals, which are fairly exciting. And we've had a look at some of the most exciting new cards in a long time, especially Shaymin EX and the colourless Mega Rayquaza EX. Really, really exciting cards, which I think are going to see a fair amount of play going forward. We haven't had time to get to Primal Clash today, so we're going to talk about the EXs and the trainers in next week's podcast, along with some regionals results as well. That's the plan for next week if nothing else comes up. We're going to be talking about EXs and trainers from Primal Clash, and we're going to be talking about regionals results. But if you really want a bit more Primal Clash love, check my YouTube channel over the next week. It's not going to go up before Monday, but hopefully Monday or Tuesday next week, but definitely by the end of the week, I'll be giving you my top 10 cards from Primal Clash, like I did with Phantom Forces. As always, if you want to tweet me, you can get me on Twitter at @TheWassy, and if you want to email me, as some lovely people have done this week, you can email me at ptcgradio@hotmail.co.uk. And I think that's probably about enough for this week. Let me know if there's anything I haven't covered that you think I should, or if you disagree with anything I've said. Thank you very much for listening. Look after yourselves till next week. My name's Ross, and you've been listening to PTCG Radio.